Shalom Aleichem. Tonight, in Yitzhak Hashem, Gimel, Kislev is the Yahrtzeit of Harav HaChosid, Harav HaGoyin, Rebbe Mordechai, Altein, Rabbi Altein, Olav HaSholem, a Shliach of the Rebbe for close to 80 years, for the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe. Started in 1940 in Elul. The Frierdiker Rebbe sent him to Baltimore to speak to the Rabbanim and speak to the students at Neir Yisrael. It's documented in the Igros Kodesh, the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he passed away last year. Nearly 80 years, probably the longest Shliach ever. It will be in the Guinness Book of Shluchim. Anyway, I have a personal connection to Rabbi Altein and a personal indebtedness and feeling, and that's why I'm making this tribute to him. Rabbi Altein was born in 1919, I believe in the Lower East Side, and he told me about this about 11 years ago in 2009. One Shabbos, he was in shul in Borough Park. Our mashpia in the shul was Rebbe Altein, his son, and he was together with him for Shabbos. And he shared his memories of this wonderful time when he was born, and afterwards, when he went to yeshiva and to cheder. His parents moved, I believe, to Brownsville, and he went to Chaim Berlin, and later he went to Torah V'das. And he told me all about it. And there are a few things that I can talk a long time about him, because he was such a special Yid, and he was a Rav, and he was a Shliach, and he was really a Rav. This wasn't just a rabbi and a Rav, B'Shem Yechuna, with a nickname. He was our teacher, our Rebbe for Taras HaMishpacha. The Rebbe appointed him and his Rebbetzin, Oleh HaSholem, Rabbi Jacobson's daughter, to teach. He should teach the boys, the men, the Bacharim, and she should teach the Kalas. And that was actually my first relationship with him was in 1984 when I was a Chasan. I learned by him and asked him questions both publicly and privately, and my Chavedim and other people in the class didn't sometimes want to ask certain questions, and they asked me if I wouldn't mind, and I did, and he was always right on top of things, not embarrassed to answer, had the information, and I'm including Shilas Atshuvas from the Debretziner Rav, I remember, and other Rabbanim, Igros Moshe is Nishtava Sereden, Rab Moshe Svarim, Rab Moshe Shilas Atshuvas, but he had a vast knowledge of information. Reb Label told me this past Shabbos that his father would get up every day, and 5 o'clock he was already sitting when he came to the house in the Bronx where he lived, and he had his yeshiva Achet Mimim, which he started in 1945. The Frierdiker Rebbe sent him to start that yeshiva, and he founded the yeshiva, and he was there till I think 1996 or so. Anyway, he had an armchair, like a recliner, and he would sit and learn Gemara Le'iyun and L'Kutei Torah and Torah Le'iyun, and he would make notes in L'Kutei Torah and Torah where he learned today, so he knows tomorrow where to start. And so he finished based on the Rebbe's Hayron, the Chassidische Parsha each week. And he was a massive Talmud Chochem. He wasn't some learning Legirsa. He was learning everything Be'iyun and Halacha Be'iyun. Anyway, he told me once that that he remembers Yidden Nebuch who were not frum in the 20s standing on milk carts, on the milk boxes, and preaching to other Yidden in the Lower East Side, like, what do you need to shtusim, mamish, trying Rahman L'Islam to persuade Yidden not to keep Shabbos. That's how negative the culture was in America. So when people said at the time in Europe, America's treif, Rabbi Altein told me that he heard it with his own ears as a young boy in the 1920s. But that's a past. because people have done tshuva, and we're in a different time. And we're not going to talk about that now. We're in a time we're preparing for Mashiach. It's Chodesh Kislev. It's only Oyer. This Rebbe Mordechai Altein had humble beginnings. His parents worked very hard. The house wasn't a wealthy home. Everything was accounted for. And he told me how he would schlep on a bus by himself as a young boy to go to yeshiva. And in the 1930s, as he became a bacher and he was learning in Torah V'das, he learned by Reb Shlomo Hyman, the great Rosh Hashiva of Torah V'das. And he also met Rabbi Yisrael Jacobson, who became his future father-in-law. And Rabbi Jacobson had a whole group of Talmidim, Rabbi Greenberg, Rabbi Fogelman, and Rabbi Edelman, and the Gordons, and the whole group of Chevra that were learning in Torah V'das, and he became their father figure, and he was Mekad of them, he taught them Chassidus, and he did it in different ways, and I've documented that in my book, Torah V'das and Lubavitch, which I encourage you to read if you want to have an understanding of Rabbi Jacobson's accomplishment with these Bacharim and how he turned them into Lubavitcher without pressuring them, with giving them room, but showing them the beauty of Chassidus and of Chassidus Nigunim and Chassidus Fabrengens. And when Rabbi the Masmid came to America, the Batel Chayfetz came to America, the Shmuel Vittel came to America, they would fabrein for everyone, and these Bacharim came and attended and were very impacted. And then it came 1939, and they decided they want to go to meet the Frierdiker Rebbe, to see their Rebbe that they've heard so much about, and they went to Europe, and two and a half weeks later, the war broke out, and Rabbi Altein and Mordechai was one of the Bacharim, and they turned around and they were miraculously saved. And he also told me about that, how they met each other, the Masbid, and they stayed with him, and on Huggis and the different things. And Rebbe Nachum Zemba on the way out, I believe he told me they had a Shiloh with Shabbos. What should they do? And the famous Rebbe Nachum Zemba, who was at the Rebbe's wedding and gave the Rebbe a gift, a sefer, etc. So he comes back from Europe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe comes to America in March, I believe, of 1940. The Rebbe is saved. And it's with these Bacharim that went to Atfatsk and a few others, American boys, that they started the Lubavitch Yeshiva, which today is known as 770. The 770 Yeshiva, Taimchi Tamimim, started with them. In fact, the label showed me a letter in the Igros Kodesh the Frierdiker Rebbe, where the Rebbe writes clearly, or maybe it's in the Toldos Chabad, Baratz Sabris, where a letter over there, which from the Frierdiker Rebbe, where the Rebbe asks Rabbi Jacobson if it's Shliach to start the yeshiva with these Bacharim. I believe that there is such a letter, which was written in I think 38. It was written earlier, and because Rabbi Jacobson was constantly sending reports to the Frierdiker Rebbe about this group of Bacharim. And Mordechai was one of the Laban, one of the soldiers. 1940. So in 1940, like I told you, the Rebbe sends him to Baltimore. The Rebbe sent Rabbi Mayor Greenberg, I believe, to Chicago, and a few others to other cities to talk and learning and see what's going on. But in Baltimore, there was this yeshiva Ner Yisrael, which, by the way, there'll be another sefer coming out, Chabad and Gedolim, Volume 2, in which one of the Gedolim is Rabbi Ruderman, Rabbi Yaakov Yitzchak Ruderman, and his history, which is very interesting. He came from a Lubavitcher home, and then he became the Rosh Yeshiva, the Litvish Yeshiva Ner Yisrael in Baltimore. So, punkt when the Rabbi Altein told me, Mordechai Altein told me that when he went to Ner Yisrael to visit the yeshiva and to meet the Bacharim, per the previous Rebbe's instructions, Rabbi Ruderman wasn't there. But he met Rabbi Moshe Scherer, who was a Bacher there, and others. He also met later Rabbi Gifter when he was there, Mordechai Gifter, who became the Rosh Yeshiva of Telz Yeshiva later. He was a Rav at the Nusach Hari Shul in Baltimore at the time, and he met him. Kol Panim, he started his Shlichus, and then the Rebbe told him to go to Pittsburgh because he received a letter and the shul was closing down. It was in a bad neighborhood, and maybe you can save it and see what he could do. So he asked the Rebbe, before Yahrtzeit Kislev, if he can go, after Yahrtzeit Kislev, so he can be at the Rebbe's Fabrengens, the Friedrich Rebbe's Fabrengen. Yahrtzeit Kislev, the Rebbe said, no, go tomorrow morning. He called him in. Like in the afternoon. I think it was Reb Chaim Lieberman who came down. All of a sudden he saw him. He said, the Rebbe wants you. And the Rebbe said, go tomorrow. No Yahrtzeit Kislev in 770, go there. And he went there and he had a Kabalas upon him. No one came. He thought, the Rebbe wrote a letter to them and the Rebbe told them that he's sending a representative, Talmud Chochem. Nothing, nada, gonisht. And he goes to the shul and he sits there and Gonish, he's learning, and he says, he looks outside, he sees Kinderlach, he sees Yiddish Kinderlach and older and teenagers, and he goes out and he says, maybe you would like to learn. And he gathered several together and he started with a few. And from that, it became mamish a yafutzu. It became a dissemination where he had hundreds of teenagers, children and teenagers learning, and not just learning, simple learning, but for those that were Shliach, he learned to them Gemara and Rashi and Taisvis and Pashut. He learned them for 3 hours. Rebbe Label told me from 3 in the afternoon till 6. They finished public school from 3 to 6. And it became such a big operation that he needed help. So Rebbe Mendel Feldman, he brought his very good friend Rebbe Mendel Feldman to help him. And he was there for, I think, 2 years. And then the Rebbe, then he came back. He got married, I believe, in 1944, I believe. And at that time, the Rebbe sent Reb Sholem Peisner, became his mechutten, because Reb Label Altein married Mrs. Reb Sholem's daughter. And actually, no, Reb Sholem's granddaughter. Anyway, I'm confused. I'm sorry. I'll call upon him. They're related. I'll call upon him. Then the Rebbe sent him to the Bronx, and he was there from 1945 till 1996. The Label shared a story that's worth mentioning on such a day on his Yahrtzeit, the Il Nishmasei. And this happened during Shiva when the Rabbi Avram Rosenfeld, the Rav of the Lubavitch Shul here in Borough Park, was Menachem Avil, Reb Label, and the other children, other sons and daughters. And they told the following story. In the late 70s, sometime the late 70s, Reb Mordechai Altein came into the Rashag's office. And Rabbi Rosenfeld happened to be there because he assisted the Rashag. He drove him and other things for him. So he happened to be there. And he heard the way Rebbe Mordechai Altein says to Rashag, he would like to know if he has permission to take an additional $5 a month for his salary because his family is growing. Could you imagine? $5 a month. Yes, it was worth much more than $5 a day, but still. And the Rashag burst out laughing. And why did he do it? Because in the 42 or 43, when he was working in Pittsburgh, and he had so many children, he opened up Talmud Teachers in different locations. That's why he needed Reb Mendel Feldman and others to help him to manage in this area and that area. So he asked the Friedrich Rebbe about it before opening up and how he should do it. And the Friedrich Rebbe said that his yeshiva is called Achet Mimim. There's Tomchei Mimim and Achet Mimim. Achet Mimim was for the younger ages. And Achet Mimim is under Tomchei Mimim. And who is the director of Tomchei Mimim? The Rashag, his son-in-law, Rabbi Gerari. But mainly she asked Rabbi Gerari when to open, how to open, v'chulu, etc. From that day on, Rabbi Mordechai Altein didn't do anything with the yeshivas without consulting with Rabbi Gerari the Rashag. Because the Rebbe told him this in 1942 and 43. But Mela, therefore, in the late 70s, when he needs a raise, and he's raising the money. He himself raised the money for his yeshiva. The budget was on his shoulders. He wouldn't take an extra $5 without asking Rabbi Gerari the Rashag if he has permission. What does this bespeak of? Kabalas Ol. that Kabalas Ol, the acceptance, the subservience to a higher authority, the Eibishter, the Rebbe, the Rabbi, and in this case, the Frierdiker Rebbe's appointee for the Yeshiva, the Rashag, was his reality. And I want to read just briefly a few lines in a letter, Igros Kodesh Chelik Zayin, of the Frierdiker Rebbe, where he writes to Reb Sholem Posner on August 23rd, 1943, Chav Beis Menachem Av Tovshin Gimel, it's letter 2119, Beis Kuf Yutes, on page Shin Samach Beis, 362, towards the bottom. He says to Reb Sholem, surely you'll be Makarev, Talmidi Achoshev Achinayle Bal Kishrein Bal Midas Tovis. Surely you'll show closeness and warmth to my important student, the one who's talented and who has good midos, good character, Rabbi Mordechai Altein, who's the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivas Achet Mimim in Pittsburgh, and you'll show him the proper respect. In addition to the fact that he worked for a year and a half starting and founding the yeshiva in Pittsburgh, in addition to that, listen to the language now. This is already on Shin Samach Gimel on the next page, top paragraph. Hu Bochor Yokor Ruach Pnimi V'Ritzini B'Tivoi. He's a precious Bochor with a inner and serious, a deep and serious nature. U'Baracha Meruba Boy, and there's great blessing that is bestowed upon him, that he has. Hashem Yisbarach Yazreyu Begashmis U'Beruchnius. Hashem shall help him in Gashmis U'Ruchnius, in the physical and spiritual. Hinu Mibchiri Ahuvi Shehinni Oyavam Ava Muyuchedes Shechem Echad Al Shar B'nei Gilam. He is my choicest, Mibchiri Ahuvi, my beloved, Shehinni Oyavim, which I love, Ava Miyuchedes, a special love, Shechem Echad Al Shar B'nei Gilam, for all those of his age and those Bacharim, those American boys that are on the front helping the Frierdiker Rebbe disseminate Yiddishkeit. Avur his masrusim la'avodosim, I will tell us aleim v'nesiras amitis, because of their complete and total dedication for this and truthful dedication. What a compliment! What an accolade! I haven't seen another accolade about a 21-year-old bacher, 23, Tafshin Gimel, right? 23 years old, not married, single. And the Rebbe writes this about him. This was Rebbe Mordechai Altein. This is why his Yahrtzeit isn't just a Yahrtzeit for the family, a Yahrtzeit for a prat, for an individual. It's for us to know that a person, he had Arichas Yomim, the Eibishter benched him, he lived over 100 years. But his Yomim were Malayim. Avram Zokim Baba Yom Avram completed, says the Zohar HaKodesh, that all of his days, each day was full. Reb Mordechai's days were full.